We've got GUIs for Python, automating Windows tasks for Python, and how does one successfully transition from a 9 to 5 technical job. Those are good topics. I'm actually really excited we got those. So we're going to do GUIs for Python. I need a person who will run a timer. Who's got a phone that has a stopwatch on it? All right, Randy, he'll make himself useful. That's how we lead, right? Okay, so set a timer for 10 minutes, and we'll start the timer as soon as I've got 5 people in the seats. So who wanted to talk about Windows GUIs? I mean, there was at least...
Wait, is it Windows specific?
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry, GUIs for Python. The GUIs for Python, not the Windows one. Not specifically Windows. I got 1, 2. They released... Come on, go ahead. Sit. Sit. Grab a microphone. Come on up, Josh.
Whose question was it?
Oh, that's not fair. No, you can't put them. You can't out them like that. That's not cool.
That used to be the rule.
Yeah.
Was it the rule? Oh,
That used to be the rule.
well, only if I didn't have a person in a
Because
seat.
otherwise, who will ask the questions?
All right, who asked GUI for Python?
Yeah.
All right, come on, Bob.
I asked the question because I have nothing useful to say.
Well, because you have questions, but you have questions.
Sorry.
All right, there we
I
go.
asked the question because I have nothing useful to say. There you go.
Okay, we will go ahead and kick off our discussion of GUIs for Python. 10 minutes, go.
So I asked the question because I'm writing some Python code right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to do a GUI. And specifically, I need something cross-platform. It's on Mac and Windows and possibly Linux.
If you just open OpenCV, it will probably have some type of GUI that you can use or repurpose. Like at school, I'm using their ROIs, so I can select and crop things out based on the GUI.
And maybe a little more specifically, I want it to look good. Like Tickle is horrible.
So if you want it to look like it's native, the only thing to use is PySide, which previously was PyQt, but you ignore that.
PySide?
Because
PySide.
PySide, P-Y-S-I-D-E. So the guys that make the Qt framework, PySide is now the officially supported one. It's slightly behind where PyQt is, but it is 100% native looking, and it's cross-platform, and it's the documentation is crap because it was written in C++, and those people don't know how to write documentation. But once you can actually understand what it's doing, it's really straightforward, and you can make your own widgets to do whatever you want, and it will, it works cross-platform perfectly fine with maybe 3 or 4 changes, if OS 10 this, if Linux that, it's easy.
What did you say your application is again?
Yeah, so it's actually several applications. One of them is essentially a web scraper. It does a little bit of web scraping plus API management.
One of the things that I've kind of recently just take a look at, I haven't delved that far into it, is Kivy. It's actually
Gaming engine.
it's an engine that goes across that you can use on mobile and any OS on there. And so documentation didn't really seem that great, but I just kind of browsed over it, was starting to get into it. It's kind of set up kind of like TK-Enter is. It's kind of, you incorporates some ideas like that. And then Pygame, if you ever messed around with that, incorporates some of the incorporates some of the libraries and some of the concepts that are used in Pygame for the graphical, how it sets things up with the canvases and all that other graphical entities. So
I would second the PySide recommendation 100% because, as Cameron said, it's the one platform that is sort of really well tested. I mean, there is no true cross-platform framework anymore because usually, it works pretty well on Windows and Linux, and usually they don't work so well on Mac. That's how most cross-platform toolkits are. But PySide and Qt are probably the closest one you're going to get. But the one thing I wanted to mention was the creator of Sublime Text. He actually has written multiple posts on how to package it for multiple platforms, because that's one of the problems of using Python, is that how do you package this as a single executable that has a consistent experience for all the users. And so he has gone through a lot of trouble to document that. I can probably find it and post on the Meetup page or something. So usually that's where the ickiness comes through. The writing the code is easy, and the integration is easy, it looks fine, it runs fine, but the packaging and deployment is the place where you would wish for a compiled language, and knowing some of those things ahead of time will make that experience easy for you.
Now remember, if you have a question, come up, tap someone out. Or if you're tired of hearing from the person, come up, tap them out.
I can talk to you. You're tired of me. I really can.
This one.
So one suggestion to keep in mind also for GUIs, since a lot of a lot of modern programs are going this way, is embedded HTML. So there are frameworks you can get, and my mind is blanking out. Someone I'm sure will remember and fill in my terrible memory. But there are frameworks you can get where you can actually load a little web browser in a window and use that as your GUI, and then it talks, from the HTML perspective, it's just like a regular web app. But then there's a framework behind the scenes, so you're not actually having to set up a web app and all that stuff. It just runs like a regular app. And then the nice thing about that is if you know how to develop web pages and you know how to do web development, you can do a GUI.
Are there any WYSIWYG visual designers that allow you to use these things to draw what your application wants to look like, and it creates all the source code for you? I don't want to hand code it.
It's weird that you would ask that
Squarespace?
question. Going off of what Jeff just said, one of those things would be called Anvil. Anvil.works or some
Yeah,
stupid
Anvil.works.
URL like that that's not real. But they were on Startup Row last year, I believe, at PyCon.
2 years ago.
Whatever. Who cares?
So,
Time is not relevant.
so to get back to what.
But it is a visual designer.
I
You
know
just
about that, but
click
I'm
and
talking
drag.
about Qt. If you're using Qt, Qt actually has an actual designer called Qt Creator. So the output of Qt, that's a WYSIWYG IDE.
So what's the difference between PySide and Qt?
PySide is a wrapper for the Qt libraries to be used in Python.
And so is PyQt.
Create-
Can you do a
so is
demo of
PyQt.
it?
One is official blessed one, but it has some licensing gotchas that you need to be aware of. PySide is completely
You're
pure
backwards.
OSS.
The blessed one is PySide.
Okay. So licensing. Okay.
Licensing is good in PySide,
yeah.
and it's the blessed one. PyQt should die.
Correct. Do a license. So PyCreator is what you want to use for designing your interfaces, but I wouldn't go that way because there are better ways to do it. For example, there is the QML, that is a JavaScript-looking language DSL for creating interfaces. That is very lightweight, and then it's more flexible. I mean, if you're coming from, let's say, HTML background or whatever, QML will feel more familiar to you in terms of, how do you place a particular widget inside something else and things like that. So QML is the way to go. I wouldn't touch Qt Creator unless I'm designing for devices with hard, physical limitation, as in, like, let's say a screen, a car screen. So I would go for Qt
Qt Creator. Okay. We cut off your mic, sorry.
So QML doesn't quite do everything that you can do inside of Qt. So if you can get something done in QML, use it. I have, unfortunately, with all the GUI stuff I've done.
Microphone. They were live streaming this. Come on.
Right, but the microphone.
Oh, they cut out. That's weird. I mean, that's probably with good reason, actually.
That's why I just started talking loud. Okay. I will talk
My bad.
louder, and then it will be shouting when the microphone kicks back in. So QML can't quite do everything. So QML.
Maybe not that
Jesus
loud.
Christ.
Sorry.
Nailed it.
Got it.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Mine works. You want to borrow this one?
No, I
I
fixed it.
don't know. So QML can't do everything that Qt actually can do. So if you can do what you want to do in QML, do it in QML. It's much easier and more straightforward. However, unfortunately, like everything I've ever done with GUIs has been like niche, weird stuff where QML can't do it. And in that case, Qt Creator is kind of, it's really easy, and it's click and drag coding.
So I would like to go back to his use case because if you talked about scraping and stuff, if I were in your place, most likely I would just write a CLI tool and then be done with it. But it depends on who your users are.
Yeah, it's for how to present the scraped material back to the user in a meaningful way.
Oh, well then I would ignore everything we've said
then
and
do
go back to
it.
Jeff and say, if you're scraping HTML, why don't you just serve it back as HTML in a browser?
So it's not all just HTML though. It's a combination of HTML and APIs. It's going to multiple services.
But an API is
presented somewhere in HTML.
As
Probably.
JSON response.
This won't
Yeah, so
address your use case, but it may be helpful to others. If you have a CLI program, GUI is a useful package. It's GOOEY. Makes it really easy to convert a command line interface into a graphical interface.
One that works. Yay.
Which, and just to kind of comment on that, my use case has been for when I'm trying to
I'm so sorry.
distribute utilities to coworkers who aren't comfortable running, passing arguments to the command line.
So yeah, the Qt advice is all very good for a traditional GUI. You know, it has all of the things you expect from a typical GUI type app. Especially if you are working with web content, not even just necessarily HTML, but if you're using APIs and pulling a lot of JSON, there's a lot of tools in the HTML and the web world that allow you to do crazy stuff. Plus, a lot of people these days are kind of used to this HTML web-ish looking. Even on phones, most people who have, most apps on a phone kind of look like web pages to some degree or another.
And it's 100% cross-platform.
And it's 100% cross-platform.
It is, but it seems like I have to do a lot of work to make HTML look as good as a native client.
Well, so I would actually guess, and I haven't seen this in Python necessarily, but in every other modern language out there, there are things that will just take JSON and make it look pretty. So it shouldn't be that difficult.
Oh, we didn't get a 1 minute warning.
It shouldn't be that difficult to find something that can.
I agree. All right, Bob, I hope we got your question answered.
We did. I appreciate it. It was good input. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. It sounded like pie side was the answer, is what I heard.
Do we clear the seats?
Yeah, clear the seats. Yeah, let's get a 1 minute warning next time. I hate to I want to give him make sure I give him an appropriate hook when possible. All right, next topic up is going to be automating Windows tasks with Python. Come on down. We need about 5 seats. We want to hear who wants to automate Windows tasks with Python.
Whose question was it?
I mean, it got a lot of votes. Come on.
It really does. Let's go to the who has the best pizza.
There's 11 votes on that. All right, we got one. Whose question was it?
That was mine.
That was your question. You got to start helping me recruit some people up here then.
I don't know how to automate Python. You're going to have to sit down.
Come on up, Danica, if you want to come up. Do you even know what Windows is? I see you carrying on a Mac and an iPad. You're very Apple-centric. Come on up, Mr. Linux Foundation.
Linux guy doing the Windows stuff,
That's all right.
Somebody's got to.
All right, 3 more. Come on, who's the Windows folks in the room? Certainly there's people who want to automate Windows tasks. There we go, 1, 2, 3. Well, maybe that's what the discussion degrades down into. Is maybe.
About how bad Task Manager is if you don't
All right, we got.
So, do we test the mics before we start this time?
No, I didn't test them last
Testing
time.
1, 2, 3.
I know you didn't test them last time, so no one could hear anything.
They're working better now.
Okay.
I think we got this. Just hold them a little close. Should be good. All right, we'll start our timer. We are going to be talking about automating Windows tasks with Python. If you have a question, you have to tap somebody out. If you have a comment, you have to tap somebody out. If you don't want to hear somebody speaking, feel free to tap them out and just sit in their spot. All right, go.
So, what do you want to know?
So I have to automate a lot of common tasks for our internal IT help desk department. Everything from installing printers to setting up Office. And I'm pretty new to Python. I was just wondering if there's a library I should be using to do a lot of that for me. If anyone's familiar with it.
You're not going to like my answer, but I'd probably say use PowerShell to do that because it's going to be a lot more straightforward.
Okay.
Granted, you could call PowerShell from Python, but I think I don't even like that answer, but that's my answer.
Can't you? This is really loud. You can import OS and make OS calls and install packages and stuff like that, right?
You can, yeah. Jeff, do you have 2 cents on this?
Yeah, I just have a funny story, so I don't know how helpful I can be, but
Remember, you can tap him out at any point. I'm already here. I can't tap him out.
this one time at band camp.
All right.
No, so when I got one of the ways, like before I was a Linux guy, I was actually a Windows sysadmin. Now this is going on 20 years ago, so you take all this with a grain of salt, a huge grain of salt. But one of the things that I did way back when was we had a system, this is Y2K time, and I was hired by a group that had done no Y2K remediation, and I was hired in June of 1999, so you can imagine how interested they were in my ability to automate stuff in weird ways. And what I ended up doing was essentially writing something that looked very similar to what Puppet does today, except that it was written, and back then it was in Perl, so, you know, basically kind of the same thing, only not as good. And it worked really well, and we actually got our remediation done on time. I was able to install everything and all that good stuff. I think that's the biggest thing that you'll often find when trying to figure out these tasks is pick a tool. Python may be a good tool, like if you're familiar with it, if you feel comfortable with it. Python is very easy to write code in. PowerShell, I've heard some things about whether it's, you know, easy or not so easy to write code in it. Python is certainly a very good language to learn. And there's a sense in which if you can get the job done, even if you're doing a lot of shelling out, you know, cmd.exe, you know, whatever, you're still getting things done. And very often you can, it's surprising how much functionality you can actually build using something like Python and just, you know, just doing the things. And then you have a lot of the .NET hooks and stuff where you can actually get Python to talk to Excel, or you can get Python to talk to Word or whatever else, and you can do funny things with spreadsheets and what have you. So it's one of these things where you just, you know, just dive in and start trying it and see what, look online for the tools that you need, and I'm sure that something exists. So that's my funny story.
Can you just repeat your requirement, as in what are the common cases you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a sysadmin, kind of like you mentioned. So I was just promoted to a position where they want me to start automating the tasks that all of our technicians do in the office.
So for instance, install packages, make sure that a particular file exists on a system, things like that. Okay, so I didn't want to mention this, but since Jeff mentioned Puppet, I thought this might be actually relevant because you have Ansible. I mean, that's one tool that you can use to basically automate things, and usually I use it in the context of Linux. That's what I use for some of the services to automate deployment and monitoring. Basically, that's I don't do any manual stuff anymore. It's all through Ansible, and I'm pretty sure Calvin will sell Salt. But the difference is that
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, but I think both Puppet and Ansible, I've seen, you know, code that deals with Windows, as in it says if OS is equal to Windows, then do blah blah blah. So I'm pretty sure Ansible supports Windows and does a lot of this automation things for you. So that is something that you can definitely look into. I would say Puppet, but then Puppet is also really hard to learn. I've tried it and I use it, unless you know you have a lot of sort of training and support to do that, it's going to be a little tricky. Though the Puppet concept is close to the original CF engine, which actually has some good theory behind it and all that, but I wouldn't recommend you to use Puppet. Ansible is basically, you can configure everything. You can say, install these packages, and all that will just be a YAML file, and with a list of things that you want to install. But of course, when you go to Windows, Windows really doesn't have a concept of package managers, so you may have to use something like Chocolatey or one of these open source package managers to install binaries and do stuff for you. Yeah, Ansible is what you should look into.
Or Salt. So I was going to recommend looking into Salt Stack. Actually, they have granted, I'm speaking from an absolute non-user of the Windows portions of Salt Stack, but I know one of their main focuses has been on supporting the Windows desktop and Windows Server engineer in doing kind of automated tasks like that. Okay. One of the things I like about Salt over Ansible, and especially I agree with you 100% on the Puppet thing, I probably had 3 false starts trying to get started with CF Engine, and if Puppet's anywhere near what that's like, it would have never gone anywhere.
Actually, started a greenfield project with CF Engine, and I was successful, but Puppet somehow is totally wild. I mean, I've deployed stuff at my work just like 6 months ago, but I had to like, it's all like just a lot of conventions, and if people are not telling you what the conventions are, you are in for a lot of pain because it's very hard to debug anything. Yeah. With Puppet, because you're running everything again and then waiting for it to fail. It's not like writing code.
So that's the advantage of like Salt Stack, is it runs on top of 0MQ, so you can actually run in parallel across thousands of machines simultaneously. and then it has returners, so you can actually throw whatever happened into a database or into Elastic or to Kibana and get graphs and kind of understand what happened as a result of running all those operations against your infrastructure.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is better to look into, instead of looking specifically for Windows automation, is just automation in general. You can still do the same commands that you can do through PowerShell that you could do on a NIC system. However, unless you're doing, it goes through command prompt for whatever reason, if PowerShell's not installed, like for Windows 7 or something. But the tools are already there. os.system, do system calls, and you can still do everything you can through there. And then if you want, just set it up through Click, install it as an editable package, so you can call that script from anywhere just as your own CLI. And then later on down the line, just pull it down so other sysadmins can use it. So just automation in general.
So I have a question. Is there Python already in your environment?
Only for me.
This is going to be your struggle, and that's why I was kind of shifting you away from that. Use some of these automation tools, then maybe, but it's probably going to be an uphill battle because you've got to have Python there to use it, right? So, and if you're depending on your environment, that may be a struggle to make that happen. So, using the automation tools that are in Python to make your life easier might be the way to go, but you may end up doing something native to Windows if you're literally doing Windows stuff. So.
You get to sit in the seat if you want to ask a question.
Now, this is not anything to do with like a programming solution, but you even have SCCM in your environment to where you can install packages, manage packages, run reports, and get reports of what's installed on there.
It's very, very basic right now, so that's kind of my job, is to bring it up to speed with what it should be.
SCCM would probably be your first start for a package manager for installing stuff in a Windows environment, because SCCM, I don't have access to it at my work anymore. For when we did it, I mean, that's everything that's used for package installation, scanning on packages, if your updates get applied monthly, and if they fail or not, it gives you a list of which workstations took them or not, and that's pretty much the one corporate thing that like users don't have and home users at SCCM that pushes all that from, and I'd probably look into PowerShell, learn it in a month of lunches, I think it's called, and learn it in a 30 days or like a month of lunches as a book. It's just real old, it's like 2005 or 2006 or somewhere around there, but it's probably one of the best books to start out with PowerShell, because Windows is one of those environments of I've been looking for Python tools for Active Directory, domain services, kind of manipulation, but I just don't, for some reason there's not too many of them, because Microsoft really doesn't like you messing with their software.
I would agree PowerShell's not terrible.
Yeah, but it's definitely harder than
Yes,
Python to program in. And it's
I
like
have
a
it on my
hodgepodge
Mac, on
of
my Linux
technologies packed together like anything else. Windows environment, PS Exec wasn't made by Microsoft, but they bought it for like $1 million or $5 or $10 million for it, where they bought off that guy. So I mean,
Sounds like after this, come talk to Eric and I, because
he's your Windows guy right there.
Yeah.
Just because it's Windows doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, the OS stuff, OS library does work for manipulating the file systems and stuff and removing stuff, but it doesn't get an Active Directory or anything like that, what PowerShell can already embed it do. And SCCM, getting that the latest version, would probably be your best bet. Or any version of SCCM is like your go-to for installing packages and stuff on there. Like I said, I don't have the 2016 version that came out, but that's pretty much...
There's 2019 now, Eric.
Yeah. So that's how behind I am.
All right, we're done talking about Windows. Woo, we made it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, last topic. We have, actually, this one I'm quite interested in, like people making a transition. So it's how does one successfully transition from a 9-to-5 technical job to Python developer, and they added additional context in Indianapolis. Do you want to be going from 9 to 5 to Python developer? Come on, where did the Kinsey kids left? Where are they at? Come on up. Not there at the bar. Oh, there you are. Hey, you guys are supposed to be in on this. 9 to 5 developer transitioning to Python. 9 to 5 technologist transitioning to Python developer in Indianapolis. What do you want to know? We got one more slot left. Come on up. Actually, who is? Oh, perfect. We do. Well done. Actually, Cameron, double check that one's working. I want to make sure.
Is this working?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Okay.
Do that again real quick.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good. No, give me that one.
Hello.
Yours is working. Hit that one again, Cameron. I think I just need to turn it up.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello.
There we go.
Look at that.
It's amazing what testing does.
Hello.
Does mine work? Yeah.
Okay. Well, so where's our timer? We're ready to go. 10 minutes. Go.
So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I would add, how do you do that with like a wife and kids that like to eat, like say at least 2 times a day? I could probably get them past.
I don't understand what the difference between working 9 to 5 as a developer is and 9 to 5 as anything else is. Well, 6 feet up doesn't work after 4:30.
All right, tapping you out.
So I can't speak specifically to a Python developer, but when I made a transition from a previous career in logistics to tech, I ended up doing a boot camp at the Iron Yard, and that was a good way to build up a
Hold on a little closer.
Build up a list of projects, and then 2, which was I feel the biggest piece, was the networking. Another thing that I've been doing since I left there is 1, come to meetups like this, and then 2, also doing side projects and blogging about it. So if someone were to look at my LinkedIn, or I would have a side conversation to them, I could refer them to my blog so they could see, okay, he's not just, get the boot camp and then nothing else.
I think one of the best things about having a 9 to 5 job is you're probably not doing much of your job outside that 9 to 5 job. So you have time to do things like take on, outside courses, Udemy type things. One of the things I always recommend to people who want to kind of expand their skills and show that they're engaged in a community is to get involved in an open source project. Like scratch an itch, pick a problem, find something that's got Python involved in it and you actually are passionate about. Like if you're into home theater stuff, there's tons of like projects around doing home theater PC stuff, and a lot of them are using Python, and get commits or triage tickets. And that basically it's a job they can't fire you from, or they don't have to hire you for. They're happy to have the volunteer help.
Where do you find those?
GitHub.
GitHub. I mean, GitHub, or basically find a, if you're using a piece of open source software at home, maybe you don't know it is open source software. If you like a certain domain of things, typically they have a copyright section where you can go find out all the libraries that this thing is built upon and go actually dig deeper into one of those and scratch an itch.
This is that was kind of a question towards you, Calvin, also, since you are an employer, because it's one of the things they do ask.
I do work after 4:30.
Only if you had a beer. But
sorry, go ahead.
one of the things is one of the hard things I've noticed is a lot of places require experience. Well, don't really require experience, or they ask for experience, especially Indeed. All those job places, I know without the networking, they typically seem to want 3 to 4 years of experience, and like they don't want to hire someone that's a junior developer that they're gonna have to put time and effort into. They and help them learn. They want someone that's they can drop on their feet as a mid-level developer and just go on running. Because like you said, junior developer for you, if you hire someone like that, you'd have to grow. So how is a hard time? I know GitHub's like that, but
wanted Rust developer with 10 years of experience.
Exactly. Hey, it's been around for like 11 years, so like it's possible.
Only 3 people qualify. Okay, so my recommendation is somewhat more conservative in the sense that, as you said, you are more experienced. You already have like technical background and things like that. This is something you can think about, is that I can probably, as an employer, I can hire a lot of junior developers with only programming experience. But it's much harder to hire somebody with domain expertise. Let's say, for instance, you actually understand electrical engineering, which is something that you cannot, you can hire electrical engineers, you can hire junior developers, but you can't really hire somebody who has been in the industry for 10, 15 years and understands ins and out, but is able to convert some of that into like products, or basically overseeing development of a particular thing or whatever. So usually that is where the gap lies, and that's where opportunities also lie, because learning programming is not that hard, But learning, I mean, if you go to school, probably electrical engineering, everybody learns the same thing. But there are very few people who actually straddle the two things. You can make that assumption about most fields.
Well, programming versus computer science, I mean, you're saying anybody can program, like anybody can plug a resistor into an Adafruit box. No big deal, but not everyone can actually lay out a PCB, just like not everyone can architect, some system that Twitter,
Yeah.
So the one thing that I've observed, so I've done this a couple of times. I've actually, been in a technical job, no Python or no whatever, and not just with Python. I've done this with Linux. I've done this with other things. The one thing to keep in mind is if you've got a technical job, most likely you're solving problems, and the problems need to be solved one way or another. Different companies have different standards as far as what technology they'll choose, and maybe you'll have to have a higher bar to prove that, say, Python is really a decent, nobody learns Python. Why would I ever, that's probably not going to be a problem with Python. But ultimately, if you're solving problems, there's a sense in which a lot of people will say, hey, I don't necessarily care what you're using as long as the problem gets solved and it works well. Hey, I'm good with that. And so one thing, if you feel like, you want to become a Python developer, if you just start solving problems in your technical job with Python day in and day out, you're just like, and pretty soon you become the dude because everyone's like, dude, go talk to this guy. He knows what he'll like write some script in this weird language that has indentation things going on. And then everyone will just be like, hey, talk to the guy. And pretty soon it's like, so how do you do this? And you're like,
think like this. Let's say you are the, if of all the electrical engineers in the US, you specialize in one field. That reduces you to, let's say, 1,000 people, right? And then in that you are a super specialist in some, let's say, optical spectrometry, whatever. I don't know, something. Okay, there are, let's say, 500 people. But how many of those 500 people can actually write code? That's where you want to be. I mean, I'm not trying to make you more specialized, but even in typical in a software engineering job interviews, what you look for is, okay, you learned Java, you learned Python in school and all that, but what have you done apart from that? Usually it is the combination of things that puts you above other people. It's going to be the same thing. I completely agree with Jeff. What you do, try to do that in Python, automating or converting your Excel spreadsheets into Python, whatever it is, but you have to start there.
So, but like back to the actual question, it's how do you transition from a full-time 9-to-5 job to a Python developer? And there's probably not that many people in here that are actually consultants. Most everyone here works regular 9-to-5 jobs. So I'm the odd one out here, and I'm telling you, don't. 9-to-5, that's what you want. Well, and like legitimately, like, why do you want to work 18-hour days to do crap? Like that's literally what having a 9-to-5 is. And then like people are taking jobs. Like, you need 3 or 4, 10 years of experience for that thing. Stop taking them. Kenzie, kids, don't take those jobs. Tell them to go fuck themselves. Like, that's the only way we can make those jobs requirements go away.
No, tell them what you really feel.
So,
So to build on that a little bit, it's interesting because everybody looked at that and said, oh, the question's pretty self-evident. But to me, Python developer is an activity. It's not a job.
Yes.
So you got to figure out what job you want within that space. Do you want to be a Python developer in a corporate environment? Do you want to be a Python developer at a startup? Another thing that you shouldn't do. Do you want to do contract? Do you want to build and sell libraries? It's all that set of stuff. And just as importantly, when you've decided what you want to do, also think about what you want to do next. Because everybody here has been talking about experience. And when you're doing something, you're gaining experience. So what do you want that experience to set you up to be able to do next?
One of the things I think that they've also asked on interviews is what are your hobbies? Is one of the first things that come up because they want to see what kind of nature of person are you? Like, do you go home and do you go and mess around on the computer? Do you play with friends? A lot of times they want to find people that are a little more social. Do you play video games? Do you play them by yourself? Do you play them with friends online? I mean, do you go home and program, or do you chat with people? That's one of the things that they just want to find someone that's not just wanting to be a programmer and making that job.
One thing you can do is that since I'm too young to have a 9-to-5 job, so
I don't know about that.
OSHA.
First thing you would have to do is you would have to learn how to use Python. So I think that one thing that you could do is you could find some sort of course somewhere to take, and then it'll be quite easy to.
I agree.
Find.
Thank you guys very much. Let's give everyone a big hand who participated. That is our Fishbowl session for the evening.